I cannot believe that this series was shown on Disney+. Disney is no stranger to sad films. There are some heartbreaking scenes that just stay with you. But I never in a million years expected to see something like this. The Disney Plus series Oussekine follows the story of Malik Oussekine and one fateful night that shook France in the 80s. Original subscribers of my channel will remember that I covered the Messiah series, and actor Sayed Al-Alami, who played Jibril Hassan in the Messiah series, plays Malik Oussekine in the Disney Plus series. It also stars Hiam Abbas, who is in Denis Villeneuve's Blade Runner 2049. So I was really excited to see this series, to see the performances, especially since the Messiah series was cancelled, and I wanted to see more of Sayed Al-Alami's work. It's a story that inspired the 1990 classic film La Haine, starring Vincent Cassel, Saeed Taghmaoui and Hubert Koundé, where Vincent Cassel's character Vince refers to Malik Oussekine's death. And in the opening credits we actually see a preview of the footage of people trying to revive Malik Oussekine. This series isn't the only project covering this story in 2022. Rashid Boucharab's film, called Our Brothers, premiered at the Cannes Film Festival. His film Our Brothers also tells the story of Malik Oussekine. And he directed the film Days of Glory, which deals with the North African men who enlisted in the French army during World War II to liberate the country from the Nazis. And an interesting fact is that Malik's father was a soldier who served in the same war. It starts off the series by saying it's based on a true story, so that immediately sets the tone. You hear the TV talk of civil unrest in France, so you know it's dangerous times. You see him enthusiastically getting ready for something, collecting tickets from a friend, whilst students are preparing for some kind of protest or demonstration, which was going on at the time because of a controversial bill. His tickets, which he describes as historic, were for a jazz club to see Nina Simone performing. How could you not love someone who likes Nina Simone? And you get the sense of feeling that how can you hate a guy like this? So innocent. And he seems very pure-hearted, you know. At least that's how he's portrayed and that's how Sayed Al-Alami is playing him. Malik Oussekine is only 22 years old at this point. Tension starts to build in the streets at night in France, and you get a sense of foreboding. By now you've already fallen in love with Malik, you know, he's a genuinely sweet young man. Tension really starts to build in these streets, then bam, it cuts you to October 17, 1961. In the same streets of France, Malik's family are running for their lives, and he hasn't even been born yet. At this point I'm teary-eyed because of the persecution that is happening to these people, and it reminds me of Children of Men, that stark, harsh reality without any music, just purely the actions of humanity that is happening and unfolding on screen. And it felt truly powerful. Just awful, gut-wrenching scenes. The same thing you feel when watching Schindler's List or Malcolm X or The Green Mile, whatever it may be, those powerful films that deal with heavy issues. And some of the shots and cuts in this series are so cinematic that you almost feel like you're watching a movie, not a series. Superb cinematography by Benjamin Roux, and fantastic direction by Antoine Chevrolier. Then you see the Oussekine family and what they're doing at home, and the mother asks the son, have you prayed? Just showing the culture that this Algerian family have, grounding them in reality and teaching us about their lives and their practices and their customs. Malik's sister goes to visit him at his apartment, but he doesn't answer, so she becomes concerned. Then she hears on the radio that a Malik Oussekine has passed away, not Malik Oussekine. At least that's what she believes she heard. And of course externally she keeps a cool head, but internally she's probably going into panic mode at this point. So she goes to her mother's house to look for him. And at this point you start to miss Sayed Al-Alami, the actor, and his performance of Malik. You begin to miss the character Malik. I wanted to see more of him. Where is he? As of yet we haven't seen him, we haven't heard anything of him. So we're almost trying to find Malik through his sister's eyes and her point of view. A genius storytelling point. It immediately hooks you and you're immediately following the character of Malik's sister with the same concern and the same worry. Sarah tells her mother that she hasn't heard from Malik, and Malik's mother tells Sarah and her son to look for Malik and put her mind at rest. Malik's sister Sarah leaves the apartment, comes back and gets a phone call The caller wanted to speak to Malik's mother specifically, and she gets told in front of her mother that he's dead and he died like a dog and all of these other rude things, and she has to keep a straight face in front of her mother because she's trying to hide the truth from her and not make her upset. Just such powerful storytelling. There's also some fantastic CGI and makeup in this series that de-ages Hayam Abbas and her husband later on. It's almost completely seamless. It's so good that it looks real. You see the birth of Malik, and it's a beautiful moment. Then you see them in true Algerian fashion celebrating together as a community and as a family. And Malik's oldest brother calls him my little king, and the name Malik actually means king in Arabic. And then from the past we get cut straight to the moment where Malik is still alive in the streets of France. And then it's back to that tension moment where his life is in danger, and so he runs for his life. And then it goes back to the moment after his death and how the family and the country reacts to his death. And by this point the whole of France knows, and the students begin to rise up and rally and demand justice for Malik from his death caused by police brutality. Then a moment of silence is observed in episode 1, and we get to see the actual real life footage of Malik Oussekine trying to be revived, and his sister watching it and his brother looking at his body. And then he pulls a veil over his head and begins to recite a prayer over his brother's dead body. And it's such a beautiful, somber, sad moment. And then that moment of silence is broken, justice for Malik, and all of the students raise their voices. And it hits home how powerful this moment was for those students and for France overall. I just get the feeling that in this age of social media, if what had happened to Malik Oussekine was filmed, it may have become a movement even bigger than the Black Lives Matter movement, and maybe Malik Oussekine would have got the justice he deserved. And then the episode finally ends with a scene with the whole family together, except for Malik, of course, where Malik's mother is finally told and comes to the realization that she has lost her son. And it's just such a heartbreaking scene and a heartbreaking moment. This episode 1, completely sold me with this whole series and gave me a sense of wanting to know more, not just about this series, but about the actual story of Malik Oussekine and what happened. Amazing performances by everyone all around. Of course, by the end of the episode 1, there wasn't a dry eye to be seen, even amongst myself. Episode 1 could have acted like a movie overall. It was so powerful. If that was the only episode we ever got, it would have been good enough. And if it had been submitted as a film category, as like a short film in any of these award ceremonies, for any of these awards, it should win all the awards. That's how good I think it is. It's something that I really wanted to talk with you about because I really felt passionate about this series. It really moved me, and it's not often that something like this comes along and has the ability to move you in such a way that it changes your perception of things and possibly even can change the world's perception of things. And this is what makes it so special, because this is on Disney Plus. This is available on the same channel that has those Marvel television shows. That's the same audience we're talking about here. This is the same audience that has Star Wars Obi-Wan Kenobi and Marvel's Loki. So this is the type of demographic that this story could aim for. And that's what's most important, is that the youth see this and learn from our past mistakes. And it's incredible that it's on a platform like Disney Plus. I still can't get over that. Episode 2 opens with a walk of silence based on historical events, things that actually happened in France. And when the family returns home, they return to racial slurs and anti-Arab statements. Again, things so sad and things that remind you of how horrible humanity can become at times. Just imagine a mother who just lost her son having to then experience that kind of abuse and hatred in her own home. Their neighbour apologizes for what happened to them, and that's something that this series does. It grounds everything in reality, but it also shows every side of things. It's quite neutral, and it shows that not all French people think like that and act like that. The somber music throughout these episodes also really sets the tone and mood in a beautiful, subtle way that makes you feel what's really going on. Beautifully done. And a lot of this emotive power comes from the past scenes that the characters remember, especially Malik's mother. She remembers her boy sitting at the dinner table. Again, some excellent de-aging work going on here as well. A testament to the technical achievements of the show. And you get to experience these loving, light-hearted moments between the family. And that's what makes you love the family even more and feel even more for them throughout this tragedy. And then you get a very light-hearted, beautiful scene where Malik's mother tries tries to teach him Arabic, and specifically the Fatiha, which is the opening surah of the Quran and also what a Muslim uses in their prayers. Again, grounding the family in culture and teaching us a few things along the way. And then Malik says that he doesn't really care about Arabic anyway. And this is a very interesting moment for Malik's father, because you can almost see the disappointment that he feels about what Malik has said. And it makes you think about the choices he had to make to bring Malik to France. And it almost looks like a father's regret that he had to do that he brought his son to France and perhaps failed as a father at instilling that love for the country back home, Algeria of course, and their cultures and customs and the faith that they have. So it's a scene with very little words, but it says so much at the same time. Again, fantastically written, directed and played out by the actors. And it's even more interesting because straight after that scene it cuts to a moment where a priest walks in and it's revealed that Malik was thinking of becoming a Christian, or so it seems, but the priest confirms he never converted to Christianity, despite Malik owning a Bible, the same Bible the priest gave him, which they found on Malik, perhaps in his coat. We see very little of Malik in this show, which almost makes his appearance on screen much more cherished and much more valued with the little time that we get to spend with him. And I'm sure that's intentional because it makes his appearance much more powerful, even though it's surrounded by those awful circumstances and you only really get to see him for the most part in times of peril. Again, we get to see the past and little moments of racism that happened with Malik's father, Miloud. And then episode 2 finally ends with his burial, and of course it's a somber scene. And here Abbas really drums into us those raw emotions that anyone would feel. But what's most striking about this scene for me is it got me thinking that she probably wouldn't have to dig deep to find these emotions. This sadness, this sorrow, that this death was caused by racism, by police brutality, and she's well aware of these things that happened to Arabs in the past and that's still going on today. Not much has changed, so I feel like the emotions that she was acting out were very close to her and she had a big well of those emotions to draw from, which is sad in itself, it really is, but it was fantastically portrayed by Hayam. And then episode 2 ends on a past scene where the whole family goes back to Algeria and it's almost a celebratory thing. So there are moments of hope and light in the show. It's not all just about the sadness that goes on. There are happy moments and it's important, I think, to keep a balance like that in the show, and it's something the show does very well. In episode 3 you learn that Malik's parents are illiterate and unfortunate events causes Malik's father to have a stroke. We later see the effects of the stroke on the father's face. In yet another example of seamless graphics, and it looks fantastic. It looks so realistic. I don't know how they achieved it, whether it was practical effects or VFX, but it definitely looks real. Later on in episode 3 we get to see another example of racism against the Oussekine family with some more incredible shots. And episode 3 finally ends with a beautiful sequence where Malik's brother, who now has a child, bathes the baby, and then Malik's brother bathing the body of his father who passed away. It's such a beautiful, tender moment that makes you reflect on life and death. And it's actually an Islamic ritual which this brother is performing, the washing of the body. Again, teaching us through visuals their cultures and customs and practices, without really explaining it, but we get what it is. Telling the story through visuals in a masterful way. And just at the end we get to see a bit of Malik and what happened to him on that fateful night. And then episode 4, the final episode, deals with the trial and what exactly happens in it. I think the power in the show comes from the portrayal of the family itself, their struggles, their memories, the things they go through, and the way they feel. I think that's the most poignant thing about this series. Perhaps the trial drags on a little too long, but it's an important thing so that we know exactly what happened. But perhaps the series could have gone without showing the trial at all and simply had the portrayal of the family and what they had to go through, because that was almost enough. But I think the inclusion of the trial also shows how balanced everything is in this series in the historical sense. I think what this series does very well is it doesn't try to pick a side, it literally just tries to show you the truth of what happened and the effect that it had on people. The scene between Malik and the priest shows us that Malik was really trying to fit in, and he felt like he fit in France, which he called his home. And the way that Malik is portrayed in this series really makes it seem that he felt like he was destined to be there, and he tried to find a real meaning to that. Through the account of someone who actually witnessed the beating of Malik Oussekine, we get to see what really happened in the show, and it's revealed to us over the course of this 4-episode series, in a way that the case was revealed in France itself. So the series really takes us on an authentic journey. You see Malik's mother cutting potatoes, something that seems very simple and almost tedious and boring. And you don't know why she's doing this. There's no particular reason why they're showing us this, or so we think, until we see a scene from the past, between mother and son, where she makes some fries for her son, Malik, and she says she made them especially for him, and that they're no good without company. Then she tells him that she won't be around forever, almost expecting that she will pass away before her son. And of course that didn't happen, and that's something that's so tragic, is that she had to accept the loss of a child. They say that no parent should survive their children. Then he leaves the house, and that's the last we see of him in the show. And now we know why she was cutting potatoes, because she remembered this moment. And then we see her sitting alone, without her son. And Hayam Abbas performs this so beautifully. It's so heartbreaking. By this point, of course, I'm already bawling. And it hits you when you come to that realization that that's why she was cooking those potatoes. We only get to see Sayed Al-Alami's performance as Malik for a few moments throughout the show, but he really leaves a lasting impression and performs it so well and plays the part effortlessly. And then you see the back of Malik, played by Sayed Al-Alami, overlooking France. And then you see the real-life surviving family of Malik Oussekine, his sister and his brothers. And you can actually see why they chose that actor Tawfiq Jalab to play Mohammed Oussekine. They look so alike. And of course, just seeing the real-life family finishes you off. It doesn't leave you with any historical information or any writing, which is typical of a historical story like this. It simply shows you the family. And as I said, this is what gives the series its strength. It's about the family. All around a fantastic series, so emotive, so deep, and again, absolutely shocking that this was on Disney+. I must commend them for doing this. It's not the average thing that you would see on Disney+. Thank you to all the creators involved in making this series for educating me about Malik Oussekine's story and really making us feel for this story. 2022 is the year where I hope the world will learn about Malik's story, because Malik could have been any one of us. And you have to ask yourself, what has really changed in France since this happened? The actor that played Malik's father in the show had something to say as well.
It's important that this show was made, but there's part of me that feels disappointed. Disappointed that this was a foreign production and that in 35 years, not a single French production mustered the courage or came up with the idea to bring this story to light.
I really hope this series opens up a debate about police brutality in France and the way that Arabs are perceived and treated there. And I hope in that way there can be a tiny bit of justice for Malik.